The operational landscape surrounding the popular video application TikTok entered a new phase recently. After anticipation of a finalized arrangement regarding its U.S. operations, President Donald Trump announced a further 75-day extension for negotiations. This decision postpones the enforcement of a potential ban mandated under existing U.S. law, pushing the deadline beyond a previously self-imposed target. The president publicly framed this extension as necessary due to tremendous progress achieved in crafting a deal intended to save TikTok. The stated objective is to utilize the additional time to finalize an agreement, explicitly mentioning cooperative work with China to prevent the application from ceasing operations within the United States. However, this official rationale exists alongside operational reports suggesting a different sequence of events unfolded just prior to the announcement. Sources close to the negotiations indicate a deal structure, converting TikTok's U.S. presence into a new American majority-owned entity with ByteDance retaining a minority share, had been finalized. Yet, following the president's subsequent announcement of a significant increase in trade tariffs targeting China, communications reportedly ensued between ByteDance representatives and the White House. These communications linked Beijing's approval of the pre-existing TikTok deal structure directly to broader negotiations concerning trade and the newly imposed tariffs, indicating the prior agreement was no longer acceptable under the revised trade conditions. This situation unfolds within a complex environment involving specific U.S. legislation demanding ByteDance relinquish control, stated national security concerns regarding data and influence, and Chinese laws asserting control over the export of core technologies like TikTok's algorithm. The extension, therefore, prolongs a period characterized by these intricate interactions between state-level economic policy, corporate negotiations, and conflicting legal frameworks. The introduction of heightened tariffs by the U.S. administration, occurring just as a potential TikTok deal structure was reportedly finalized, appears to have been a significant intervening factor. According to information from individuals proximate to the discussions, this trade action prompted a direct response regarding the TikTok negotiations. Beijing's position, conveyed via ByteDance representatives, shifted, linking approval of the corporate restructuring explicitly to broader discussions encompassing trade policy and tariff levels. This established a clear connection, from Beijing's perspective, between the specific corporate transaction involving TikTok and the wider geoeconomic posture of the United States. The U.S. president subsequently reinforced this linkage from the American side, publicly characterizing tariffs as a potent economic instrument integral to national security, suggesting their utility as leverage in securing Beijing's consent for a TikTok resolution favorable to U.S. interests. ByteDance itself confirmed publicly that discussions are ongoing, but crucial issues remain unresolved, emphasizing that any final agreement necessitates approval under the framework of Chinese law. This underscores Beijing's assertion of authority, particularly concerning its export controls, which specifically cover technologies like TikTok's core recommendation algorithm. This regulatory reality presents a fundamental challenge. U.S. law, enacted last year out of expressed national security concerns, mandates ByteDance relinquish control over the algorithm and divest most of its financial stake. Conversely, Chinese export controls require Beijing's official sanction for any transfer or restructuring involving this critical technology asset. These opposing legal and strategic positions create an operational deadlock centered on the algorithm itself, viewed by Washington as a potential vector for espionage or influence, and by Beijing as a sovereign technological asset subject to state control. Negotiations around potential acquirers, reportedly involving entities like Oracle, Amazon, Walmart, and BlackRock, must navigate this difficult terrain. An advanced structure discussed with Oracle, potentially allowing ByteDance to retain some algorithmic control, illustrates the complexity, as such an arrangement might conflict with the letter or intent of the existing U.S. divestiture law. This entire dynamic plays out against a backdrop of evolving political positions within the United States. The president's current stance, aiming to facilitate a deal rather than enforce a ban, contrasts with earlier administration actions and the broad consensus in Congress that drove the divestiture legislation. Factors potentially influencing this shift include stated beliefs regarding the platform's utility for political outreach and reported efforts by TikTok to cultivate favor with the administration. Congressional actors, particularly those focused on national security implications related to China, maintain a cautious stance. Key figures emphasize adherence to U.S. law, preventing potential Chinese state data access or content manipulation, and await specifics of any proposed deal to ensure alignment with these parameters. Other political interpretations view the extension primarily as a tactic to divert attention from contentious trade policies. The 75-day extension, therefore, does not resolve these underlying conflicts but rather allows more time for these competing interests: U.S. national security mandates, Chinese technology controls, corporate negotiations, and political maneuvering to find a potential, though complex, pathway forward. While the executive branch pursues this extended timeline for a negotiated solution, it operates alongside a distinct legislative reality established by the U.S. Congress. The law passed last year sets forth specific requirements centered on ByteDance divesting its financial stake and relinquishing control over TikTok's core algorithm technology. This legislative action was predicated on stated concerns prevalent in Washington regarding national security, specifically the potential for the Chinese government, through ByteDance, to access sensitive data from the application's vast American user base, estimated at over 170 million, or to utilize the platform for disseminating propaganda and influence operations. Yet the current administrative approach demonstrates a departure from the trajectory implied by this law and the earlier consensus supporting it. Having previously attempted a ban during the last presidential term, the president more recently opposed the legislative ban effort and has articulated a goal of preventing TikTok from going dark, seeking a deal instead. This shift coincides with public statements crediting the platform's role in political outreach, particularly to younger demographics, and follows observable efforts by TikTok itself to engage with the administration, including visible participation in inauguration events and direct communication with users attributing the app's continued operation to the president. This divergence between the legislative mandate for divestiture and the executive's pursuit of a potentially less stringent, negotiated outcome highlights differing priorities or assessments of the situation within the U.S. government. Congressional figures maintain oversight, with some expressing conditional openness to an extension provided the resulting deal satisfies security requirements and legal compliance. Others, particularly within committees focused on China, reiterate the imperative that any arrangement must demonstrably prevent Chinese Communist Party access to user data or manipulation capabilities, awaiting administrative details that confirm alignment with U.S. law and national security interests. Alternative interpretations exist within the political sphere, viewing the delay not through the lens of complex negotiation necessities, but as a political tactic designed to deflect from other policy controversies, such as the recently imposed tariffs. The additional 75 days thus represents a period where these contrasting perspectives and objectives, the legal imperative for divestiture, the executive drive for a deal, persistent national security anxieties, and political calculations, continue to interact, leaving the ultimate resolution uncertain. Beneath the surface of diplomatic language and deadline extensions lies the fundamental incompatibility between the U.S. legislative mandate and China's asserted control over crucial technology. The core asset, TikTok's algorithm, remains the focal point of this impasse. U.S. law demands its effective separation from ByteDance control, driven by security imperatives. Simultaneously, Chinese regulations classify such algorithms as export-controlled items, granting Beijing decisive authority over any transfer or significant restructuring. This creates a structural impediment that simple corporate negotiation cannot easily overcome. Potential deal frameworks, such as the one reportedly discussed involving Oracle, highlight attempts to navigate this complex environment. A structure allowing ByteDance to retain some algorithmic control, while perhaps facilitating a quicker agreement or satisfying certain commercial interests, directly challenges the premise of the U.S. divestiture law. The feasibility and legality of such arrangements remain significant unresolved questions. Furthermore, the explicit linking of the TikTok resolution to broader U.S.-China trade and tariff disputes elevates the matter beyond a singular corporate transaction. This tactic, employed by both sides, the U.S. administration invoking tariffs as leverage, and Beijing conditioning deal approval on wider trade talks, demonstrates how specific technology and corporate governance issues are becoming integrated into larger geostrategic and geoeconomic contests. It signals that the resolution is contingent not just on finding amenable corporate partners, but on state-level calculations regarding national interest, economic policy, and technological sovereignty. This environment presents considerable operational difficulties for any potential U.S. acquirer. Companies like Oracle, Amazon, Walmart, or investment firms like BlackRock must not only assess the commercial viability of a restructured TikTok US, but also navigate the treacherous crosscurrents of conflicting international laws, shifting political winds in Washington, and the strategic objectives of Beijing. The inherent risks associated with data security arrangements, potential future regulatory actions, and the uncertainty surrounding ultimate control over the core technology complicate any straightforward acquisition process. Therefore, the 75-day reprieve does little to alter these fundamental underlying tensions. It merely provides additional time within which these competing forces, legal requirements, security concerns, technological controls, economic leverage, and political interests, must contend, leaving the final outcome contingent on navigating these deeply embedded, complex, and often contradictory operational realities. Looking beyond the immediate mechanics of the negotiations, this ongoing situation carries significant implications for the broader strategic environment. The entanglement of a specific social media application with high-level trade policy and national security directives illustrates the evolving nature of international relations, particularly between the United States and China. Technology platforms, especially those with vast user bases and sophisticated algorithms, are increasingly viewed not just as commercial entities, but as instruments potentially impacting national security and geopolitical influence. The explicit use of economic tools like tariffs as leverage in a negotiation over technology governance, and the reciprocal linkage by Beijing, sets a precedent for how such disputes might be managed or escalated in the future. This case also throws into sharp relief the inherent difficulties nation-states face in regulating powerful, globally operating digital platforms originating from potentially adversarial states. Questions of data sovereignty, algorithmic transparency, and the potential for foreign state manipulation become central challenges, testing the limits of existing legal and regulatory frameworks designed for different technological eras. The struggle to define an acceptable structure for TikTok's U.S. operations, balancing national security concerns with commercial realities and free expression principles, reflects a wider, unresolved global debate on technology governance. Furthermore, the visible divergence between the legislative intent embodied in U.S. law and the current executive approach highlights potential inconsistencies in formulating and executing national security policy related to technological threats. While Congress mandated a clear divestiture path based on security assessments, the administration's pursuit of a negotiated settlement, potentially accommodating continued foreign minority ownership or influence, suggests differing tactical approaches or perhaps even strategic objectives. This lack of unified posture can create uncertainty for allies, adversaries, and the involved commercial entities. Finally, the situation inevitably intersects with the domestic political landscape. The prolonged uncertainty and the administration's shifting position provide material for partisan critique and intra-party debate, as evidenced by comments framing the extension as either pragmatic necessity or political diversion. The handling of the TikTok issue becomes another data point through which different actors assess the administration's strategic clarity and policy execution, potentially influencing public perception and political discourse, leading into sensitive periods. The ultimate resolution, therefore, will reverberate beyond the fate of one application, impacting the trajectory of U.S.-China relations, the global approach to technology regulation, and the coherence of U.S. national security strategy itself. Thus, the granting of additional time merely extends the period wherein fundamental incompatibilities must be addressed. The friction between U.S. legislative demands for divestiture grounded in national security, China's assertion of sovereign control over its technological assets via export laws, and the overt linkage of this specific case to broader economic statecraft persists unresolved. Navigating this complex intersection of law, technology, security imperatives, and international trade dynamics remains the central operational challenge. The manner in which these competing pressures are ultimately reconciled, or fail to be reconciled, will inevitably define not only the future of TikTok's presence within the United States, but also contribute significantly to shaping the contours of future state-level interactions within this increasingly contested technological and geopolitical domain. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this analysis, and be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more geopolitical insights like this. I love hearing your thoughts, so drop a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. Share this video with anyone interested in deeper perspectives on current events. Until next time, stay informed and think critically. Thank you.